AITA for kicking my son and his GF out? I am not the original poster. That is you, Hot Wolverine 7330. She posted in r, am I the asshole? Mood spoiler. Frustrating. Less than. Original post. October 28, 2023. This situation has had me a bit confused, so one of my neighbors suggested I post it here. I 55F have two children, George 31 meters and Gabrielle 29F. Gabrielle recently got engaged and I am helping her plan the wedding in my spare time, which the entire family is very excited for, except for George. George recently divorced his wife of 7 years, Susanna 28F, after he said the spark had gone out. They have a set of twins together, Amy and Alice 6F, and are trying to set up a healthy co-parenting relationship. Susanna is a great mother to my grandkids, and I was disappointed in George for giving up so fast on their relationship without even trying couples counseling. But it wasn't my business or place to say anything. The drama started when George brought his new girlfriend to dinner at my house. He met his girlfriend Bethany 25F through a work colleague, and they have been dating for 4 months. At dinner, Gabrielle and I were discussing flower arrangements, and Bethany felt the need to ask George if he'd ever marry again. George coughed before replying that he'd have to think about it, which Bethany seemed to deflate at. Well, this caused Alice to cry about how she wants mommy and daddy to love each other again. George and Bethany just sat there while my granddaughter screamed. After I comforted Alice, I pulled George aside and asked if he was sure about Bethany, which he told me was none of my business. I told him it was my business who he invited into my home and my grandchildren's lives, since I've been caring for them in my spare time while he works. He and Susanna have 50-50 custody. George got angry and said it was Gabrielle's fault for mentioning weddings in the first place. I told him to stop acting like a child and to be happy for his sister. Then Bethany felt the need to insert herself and tell me that she and George were together no matter how much I liked his ex-wife. After that, I was done with the conversation and asked them both to leave. George and Bethany stormed off, flipped me the bird, and left my grandchildren at my house at 7 p.m. I had to call Susanna to collect the children since they had school in the morning, and I was attending a cake tasting with Gabrielle the next day. I feel like I shouldn't have to tell my 31-year-old son to be happy for his sister or argue with a random woman whom I have never met before in my own home. So AITA? Relevant comments. George needs to pay for daycare for a while. The truth is, George can't afford daycare with the child support and alimony he owes Susanna. I agreed to babysit my grandchildren as a favor to him. I love my grandkids, but I wish George would appreciate the thousands of dollars I'm saving him each month. Just quite watching them, and he'll come crawling back. I would if I thought he could afford it. We might disagree, but I don't want my son to be homeless. Maybe they need to rethink the custody agreement if he can't care for them. If Susanna took on more custody, then George would owe her more child support, which he's already struggling to afford. Plus, it would mean that Susanna would have to work part-time hours, which isn't really an option in her industry. Alice needs counseling. My husband and I have suggested that George pay for her to get some counseling, but he keeps saying that he needs to save and can't afford it. What exactly were you asking when you asked if he was sure about Bethany? I was asking if it was really the right time to introduce her to the family, since his daughters are still sensitive about the divorce and are trying to come to terms with it. I didn't ask him in the context of, is Bethany right for you? I meant it as in, are you sure this is the right time to introduce her? I didn't inherently dislike Bethany, but maybe it would have been better to introduce her to my grandkids after they've recovered from the divorce. Did George ask if he could bring Bethany beforehand? George asked me if Bethany could come 20 minutes before he was supposed to arrive. So it's not like I could say no at that point. Oop is voted NTA. Update. Same post. October 29, 2023. Next day. I didn't expect this post to gain so much attention, and I want to thank everyone who gave their honest opinions and helpful suggestions. This situation happened a few hours ago and I thought it right to make an update. Bethany came to my house to apologize for how she acted at dinner last week. She told me that she was 2 months pregnant and George had broken up with her after she told him because he has too much responsibility and didn't want to be in the baby's life. I then spent the better part of 3 hours talking with Bethany about the baby and what she wants. She says she wants to keep the baby even if George refuses to be in its life. And I told her that I would help with childcare if she needs it since she doesn't have any family that live nearby. Before I got angry with George, the first thought I would call him and give him a chance to explain. George was angry that Bethany had shown up at my house and insisted that it wasn't his baby. I told him that he should get a paternity test and he asked me for $500 to cover it since he's struggling. I told George that he needs to figure it out himself since he's about to be a father of 3. And that he better step up and do right by his kids. George then hung up. Well, 2 hours later I get a call from Susanna to say that George hadn't picked up the kids like he'd previously agreed to, and could she drop them at my place because she had work. I agreed for her to drop Amy and Alice off and tried to call George again. I called 12 times and they all went to voice message. I don't know where George is and have called his place of employment to try to find out. However, they refused to tell me anything. I've agreed to watch Amy and Alice until Wednesday, and Susanna has reported this incident to CPS. I assume she plans to file for full custody and I can't blame her. Right now I'm worried that George has run off somewhere or done something irresponsible. I am disgusted and will not be doing him any favors in future unless he has a very good explanation and accepts some responsibility. This was hard to write but felt good to get off my chest. Thank you everyone for responding to my first post. Relevant comments. Heavily downvoted comment, but I liked OOP's response. Commenter. Hey, op. You're disappointed in your son for giving up on his marriage so easily, and I'll bet dollars too. Donuts that you and your dill have been telling the twins that mommy and daddy are getting back together. I bet you asked your granddaughter to say something like that to help daddy realize that it would make everyone happy. You need to butt out of your children's personal lives, get a damn hobby. Oop. You owe me quite a few donuts then, since you're dead wrong. I'll poke my nose in my son's business when he's being an irresponsible parent and not taking accountability for his children. Bethany is pregnant. It's his time to have the twins and he's nowhere to be found. It just proves to me I should have made his personal life even more of my business. Alice caused drama and you exacerbated it by asking about Bethany. Alice is 6 years old. She hardly meant to cause drama, as you put it. She's a 6-year-old little girl who doesn't understand why her parents no longer live together. I never asked George if he was sure about Bethany in the context of, is she the one? I meant it in the context of, is he sure he's making the right choice to introduce her to the family so soon? Since his own daughter clearly isn't ready to think of her dad marrying someone else yet. I don't care who George ends up dating, but he has children to think about, and my granddaughters need to come before any random woman he's been seeing for 4 months. George had broken up with her after she told him. George, Your Honor, I'm already stretched thin financially. I can't pay child support for another child. No judge ever. Oh, okay. I'm sure this is not the first time George has been a selfish, self-centered, immature butt munch. George bringing a woman he's been dating for 4 months to meet his 6-year-old daughters says a lot about him. Add on the fact that he's refusing to have anything to do with his latest child. And he looks even worse. I thought Bethany was an idiot for her comment at dinner. But the fact that she is pregnant puts it in a new light. Still the wrong thing to ask him in public. But at least she apologized to Oop. They have been dating for 4 months and she's already pregnant? And his dumb ass introduces her to his little kids? JFC. George. Dude needs to learn how to rap it. Honestly, if you have the parts, be smart. This feels real because of how frustrating this is. Oop seems to be trying her best, and is as mystified about her son's actions as everyone else. George is way too young to be having a midlife crisis. And he certainly can't afford it. I don't get the commenters who seem to make up an entire story about what the Oop is probably saying, with zero evidence. If you project any harder, you'll have to go work in a movie theater. It's so hard when we can't deny that our children are selfish assholes. Were we bad parents or were they just born assholes? Someone tell George a condom is a lot less expensive than child support. So, what are we thinking? Gambling? Drugs? Both? I have a strong impression that there's another shoe yet to drop from George that will explain some of the behavior beyond, he's an irresponsible jackass. Dear George, you'd have less responsibility if you stopped sticking your dick in people. Poor kids. George seems to expect everybody, his mother, his ex-wife, to clean up his mess for him and help him. And runs when he's questioned about his own behavior. Also, once you have children, they take precedence. You know what's cheaper than raising unplanned or unwanted kids? Any form of birth control available. Woman facepalming light skin tone ISTG. Why is anyone bringing strangers around their children minutes after a divorce, breakup? It's gross. My general takeaway from reading BORU: nobody in the world seems to comprehend how birth control works. People are constantly ending up pregnant. WTF was this dude thinking? He divorced his wife of 7 years, then started dating a girl for 4 months only to introduce her to the family so quick while his twin daughters are still suffering from the divorce, and he got mad about having a third child and bouncing out 'cause he can't afford? My guy, you can afford condoms. My guy, you can pull out. It's free. My guy, you could have at least work on the custody agreement so you can out your kids in therapy. My guy, you are the biggest self-centered, brain-dead dumbass I ever heard. You failed as a father to your kids for not getting them the help they need because of you and your wife choice. And now you want to run because you got your GF prego with a third who you can't even care for? It takes two to tango. You help make that baby. If George has time to date, he has time to look for a better paying job. Get some more schooling to get a better paying job. Or get a second job if he's struggling this much financially. He should be working hard to do better for his kids. Not finding a place to wet his dick. Especially his apparently unwrapped one at that. I can almost guess he cheated on his wife from how you described him. I feel sorry for the kids. You're doing a good job being grandma, and if he comes back, everyone needs to make him accountable for what he does. I'm almost positive he has ran. Jesus, what a mess. I feel bad for the kids. Dudes who don't wear condoms and pull out after already having more kids than they can handle should be slapped. I hate that stupid people can procreate so easily. Oop is a hell of a lot nicer than I would be to my son in her position. My son would be picking up his head, figuratively, From the farthest corner of my backyard, should he ever even think of acting like George to the mothers of his children.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. EpicAriaCast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.